Good afternoon, everybody. Here we are. We're going to kick it off here. We got a nice, wonderful group. Thank you very much for all coming. We are here for Excellence Revisited. So this is our annual review where we go back in time. We look at some of the Model of Excellence winners, see how they've done over the years, talk to them about how life has changed. We're not going to talk about New York landlords. We had a great, if you wanted, this group knows a lot about New York landlords, so that's a separate roundtable session, and you'll find out some interesting tips there. But we have Josh Green from Panjiva, class of 2009. Todd Krizelman of MediaRadar, class of 2011. Laurent Ohana of Reachable, class of 2012. Jay Hallberg is unfortunately not going to make it, but he was class of 2010. And I only bring that up because alphabetically, everybody's in chronological order. 2014 was Dan Zadok. Okay, so this will be no more. That's big data, I'm telling you. So,
so does it mean you're starting at A again?
Yeah, yes, that's a good point. Yeah, so if you're A, Aardvark Associates, they're winner next year for sure. Anyway, so we want to kick it off here. We don't have slides, but I wanted to kind of give you guys this way to open it up. So Thanksgiving is coming. You're going to meet your relatives probably. There's an aunt or a grandparent or something that comes up to you and says, "So what do you do again?" That's how I want you to go through and just kind of explain what you do in very simple terms for the group here. So we'll start off, Laurent.
Sure. Great. Thank you. Well, Reachable provides what we call relationship analytics. We analyze a person's Rolodex and match it against our reference database of 35 million profiles of people and companies. And we find the commonalities that show you how you might be connected to people, and we display that to you on our SaaS platform, and you are able to use that information to make cold leads turn into warm leads. So there's a lot more to it, but in 30 seconds, that's
the core. More time, so it's.
I'll get to it later.
Long dinner. So
that's the core of what we do.
Okay, good. No, I want to come back on some of that methodology right there. So, please, Todd.
MediaRadar is a company that sells a subscription to any ad-supported media company. So whether it's, and our focus is really on magazines, newspapers, and websites. And what we do is we offer a benefit where we are very good at figuring out two things. One, a sales rep, when they already know who they want to pitch, telling them everything that they need to know to win that account. And then number two, when sales reps are trying to think about who to prospect for, they often think that they know all the prospects in the market, but the truth is there are just millions of advertisers in the U.S. market today, and so MediaRadar is very good at saying, you're really not realistically going to pursue more than 150 at a time, and we're very good at doing matchmaking, figuring out which 150 each sales rep should pursue. It's a SaaS business sold as a subscription.
Mm-hmm. Panjiva is a data company that crunches government data, mostly government data, that describes international trade, so shipments that cross international borders. We take that data and profile as many companies as we can that are involved in global trade. So today it's about 5 million companies, and more importantly, we are mapping relationships between those companies. What Panjiva is really good at is identifying the relationships between buyers and suppliers globally. So we've profiled about 5 million companies and mapped tens of millions of relationships between those companies. And our customers, it's actually a pretty diverse customer set that are using the data in pretty diverse ways. We have companies that are looking for suppliers around the world. They use this relationship data to figure out who they should buy product from. We have companies that use our data to find customers. We have a fair number of people who use us as a competitive intelligence source, and then some finance guys use us to identify the activities of publicly traded companies in the international sphere. So that's what Panjiva does.
Cool. So relationships, obviously, through all of these, I picked that up. Talk a little bit, go back around the other way, just kind of talk a little bit about how you really make those connections? How do you codify those relationships?
Well, for us, the Freedom of Information Act is an amazing thing. It has put a lot of data out into the public domain. It turns out that if you wanted to, you could get a CD-ROM from the U.S. government every day that tells you about shipments that are coming into the United States by boat. This was actually the first data set that we started with. We've since gone out and got data from China, from Mexico, and about a half dozen other countries. But that data is fascinating data because for each individual shipment that comes into the United States, it's telling you who sent the goods, what the goods were, and who received the goods. That data, once you kind of aggregate it, clean it up, allows you to map all these relationships. I can explain it in 30 seconds. It took us 2 years to develop the technology to actually do that. But kind of the premise of it is that once you've mapped all these relationships, you can use it as a search engine and just type in JCPenney sweater suppliers and see exactly who's shipping sweaters to JCPenney. So that's how we do it. And it took us a while to figure out how to do it. It also took us a while to figure out why exactly our customers valued it. That was something we didn't intuitively understand. Now we do.
What were you doing? Why did you start that?
Well, we didn't start the company that exists today.
Okay.
We thought we were starting a Yelp for global trade. That didn't work. Then we thought, well, maybe we're going to be a smarter version of Alibaba. And that didn't work.
Too bad.
Yeah.
That would have been even a dumber version of Alibaba would have been fine, right?
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. And you asked, about family and do they know what you do? And most of my family still has no clue.
No, mine's like Sky works in computers.
Totally. But when they saw that Alibaba went public, they said, "Oh." But frankly, over time, we failed at those things. But our customers kept saying to us, "What you guys are is you're a data company. We rely on you for data that we can't get from anywhere else in as usable format as you're providing it." And it took us years to accept that and say, "Oh, okay, well, we can do that. We can be the best data company we can be." But eventually we figured it out.
Wonderful. Todd, please, just a little bit about the connection part. And then.
So for us to be able to explain the background for an advertiser, so one of our clients is the Wall Street Journal. So if you're a sales rep at the Wall Street Journal and you want to know everything that Tag Heuer, a luxury watch brand, is doing, first we had to figure out how do we track all the advertising that Tag Heuer buys. So they buy in rich in rich zip codes across America. They buy in Aspen, they buy in Telluride, they buy in Malibu, they buy in national newspapers, they buy in magazines, they love video, doing 15-second clips. Took us many years to be able to track all of that ecosystem. On an average day, we track, just in the U.S., about 1.1 million advertisements. And then once we have that, then we do the same thing. We start to aggregate it, and I'm simplifying it a little bit. We collect about 40 different variables on Tag Heuer, and then we will put out a little report, and we call them account reviews, that if you wanted to do business with Tag Heuer, to sell advertising to them, this tells you everything about their strategy. What is the household income that they really are targeting? Are they really positioned to get into the West Coast? They're expanding more on the West Coast. So we've learned over the years to really extrapolate a ton about someone's strategy based on, it's like reverse engineering strategy by looking at what someone's marketing campaign was. Mm-hmm. And it happens in real time. And I think the packaging of data was something we didn't understand was just as important as the data, actually. So we learned that for the product to be consumed meant that it had to be unbelievably easy to be consumed. Our customer is a sales rep. A sales rep is often traveling. They're busy. They tend to not be analytical in nature. And so we had to package the information in a way that it could be consumed very, very easily. We've spent years we still do a UI testing every 2 weeks of the year to make it easy to consume.
Wonderful. I want to come back to some of these too, but Laurent, please, just you think LinkedIn, obviously you're well beyond that, so talk about how these relationships start to get built and how you really make people reachable.
It's interesting because we went through the same, evolution of ideas over the years. When the company got started in 2007, we started with a graph technology. At the time, nobody knew what graph engines were. And the hypothesis was if you collect information about people from the web and you try to figure out how people are connected, there's got to be a business there. And that's what it took us 2 years to actually prove that we could do it. And we had a prototype in 2009 that basically aggregated information about people, put it in a graphic engine, ran algorithms, and figured out how everybody was connected to each other based on just understanding what was going on in the data we were collecting. And then we said, okay, well, this is definitely better than LinkedIn, so we got to go out there and make this available to people. So, and millions of people are going to sign up, and we're going to be a smarter version of LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
So 30 billion of market cap later, for them, not for us. That didn't work, but people kept kind of coming back and using the product, and you really start listening to people and like, what are you really using this for? And people basically told us a couple of things. One, that they wanted to have one place where they could put in all of their contacts. And because they didn't put all of their contacts into LinkedIn, they didn't put all of their contacts anywhere, and they didn't trust the CRM system. So we said, okay, well, think of Dropbox in the cloud, where you can put in all of your contacts, and we'll give that to every person on planet Earth. So once we started doing that, people said, oh yeah, I really don't have a place where I can put all my contacts in one place. And so that was one thing we did. And then the other thing is small businesses and larger businesses came to us and said, well, we want to be able to work in a group. Can you give us this collective Rolodex thing? And we said, okay, we can do that. And there was a relatively simple rejiggering of what we were doing. So we gave individuals a kind of Rolodex, their own private Rolodex, and we gave groups a collective Rolodex. And so that was something we added on top of what we've always had, which is a massive database of licensed data and web collected data. So licensed data, we did a strategic partnership with S&P CapIQ earlier this year, and we have all their people and company data in our database, and we're leveraging that for relationship finding as well. So essentially, you go back from the beginning and say, okay, you've got this big database, and we didn't really know what was the thing to put on top of it so that people would find value in it. Then you listen to customers, and they told you what the pain points were, and you added those one at a time. And now you have this big, massive database with all this relationship analytics going on top of this database. But it becomes personalized to a person by virtue of the fact that we're giving them a place to put in their Rolodex, all of their networks from everywhere. And that we're making this available to groups of people in companies.
So if I put my contacts in, you said it's the map, everybody can see my contacts?
No, nobody can see your contacts.
Oh, okay.
That's exactly the point, is that we give you one place, private, yours, where you can put your contacts and all of your contacts. Nobody sees them.
So if I put those in there, then you will show me connections?
We will show you how what we'll do, so we're data people here. What we do is we take every one of your contacts with a matching algorithm that basically figures out who your contacts are and looks into our database. Oh, John Smith from XYZ company. Oh, we have this guy in our database. That's the guy's bio. Now we understand what is the value to you of this John Smith, because your Rolodex is just a list of names and phone numbers and emails. How do you extract value from it? You only start extracting the value from it once you know who these people are, what they're doing, what are they involved with, what boards they're on, what companies they're running, etc. So we basically attach to every person in your Rolodex their complete biography. And now suddenly we can start mining your Rolodex, because your Rolodex has been enriched by connections to our database.
Okay. You can start to see things
And,
about, okay, now
and,
this
now,
person...
and now we can show you pathways of basically showing you how, basically it's a people search engine. How am I connected to John? It will show you all the pathways you're connected to him, because we know who John is, we know who you are, we know who the people in your Rolodex are, and we have this inference engine, basically looks at all different places people have worked, and where they went to school, et cetera, and we basically are able to draw the path and put a score on it, and present you all the ways that you're connected, scored, ranked. So
What's the score? The score is
from 0 to 100.
And 100 means
100 means
it's me.
It means so it's very popular to use to be in the predictive analytics business now. So 100 is we predict this guy really well.
Okay.
By saying that, my valuation just went up 100%.
Okay. Wonderful. I mean, I want to ask some horizontal questions, but I'm really interested in kind of individually how you get some of the stuff done. I mean, talk about the smarter version of X. I mean, Todd, you've got some big guys out there doing media tracking. So, for those, Nielsen and Kantar, you can't get much bigger than that. Global, huge staffs. I mean, how did you make a play for yourself and your value with these, basically a global duopoly going on in the ad tracking business?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of you know those two companies. I think we liked... So I had been an entrepreneur for about 10 years, and then I took 5 years off, and I worked for Bertelsmann. And that was when I really started to understand how a big company worked. I really didn't know until I got to a big company. They have Bertelsmann, big German company, wonderfully successful. They treated me very well. I have nothing but good to say. But things moved glacially, totally glacially, and they were happy to move glacially. It was just the internal clock speed of the culture. They did not perceive it as a problem at all.
It's faster than continental drift. So it's all relative.
Just barely. And so that was my first inkling that, you did have this duopoly, and anytime you have a duopoly like that, it to me, so much of, when you look at what makes companies successful, is actually the industry setup, right? And in my first company, which I did for almost 10 years, there were like 30 companies, all of us had raised $50 million, and it was just unbelievably difficult to get ahead. So when we started the company, we started very narrow. We tried to do the same business, but we called it Magazine Radar. We bought the MediaRadar name, we bought TV Radar, we bought all these different names, and we bought them in different countries. But we basically said we were going to go and own a little piece of the market. And we thought that would be, one of the things I observed when I was at Bertelsmann is that Bertelsmann it wasn't just that they were horrible, they literally did not care. Right? And this was a bet in my own head that Nielsen and Kantar, we would be staking out a little market to them that looked valueless. Right? Anything valueless to them was like, if you're doing $4 billion annually, a $100 million opportunity doesn't hit the screen. And so we chose a piece that was too small for anyone else to want to go in. And then
magazine side?
The magazine,
okay.
And then we chose newspapers, and we were even more narrow than that. We said magazines in the national market, and then we said regional, city and regional, and then we said enthusiast, and then we went to B2B, and then we got into digital, and then we started to look at different countries, and so we decided we would not try to sort of boil the ocean. We said, let's figure out Canada, because we don't really know that much about doing business outside of the U.S., and that was, by the way, I should say that we were embarrassingly bad at this in the first year. It was just horrible. We really thought we could nail Canada. We thought it was the 51st state. We just completely flopped on our face.
Was that your marketing up? Was that your tagline?
The first year was just complete failure. Second year, mostly, complete failure. And then the third year, we signed Rogers Media, which is, if you know the Canadian market, is the largest media company. And then the entire market fell very fast after that, after about a year after it. But we started to, internally, we were trying to build a playbook for entering other countries, and we knew that we would make mistakes. I never imagined I'd make as many mistakes as we did in Canada. And then after that, we decided, we spent a lot of time looking at a lot of other countries, and we chose just China. So we actually started collecting data in about 17 countries for 3 years, but not selling any of it. And then after 3 years, where we had enough that we could really have long-term trend analysis, we then said, okay, we're never, ever going to succeed if we choose more than one. And we've said we're going to take 5 years to really get to some level of penetration in China. We're in year two of that, and the first year has actually gotten better. We did this once we understood the Canadian experience. Actually, that was very, even though we think as Americans, or I had thought as an American how easy Canada would be, it's actually very similar to China, actually. It's just a totally different country with its own set of laws, and you need local lawyers and local salespeople and local management. I know these all sound like unbelievably obvious points now, but at the time...
Somebody just tweeted, China different than Canada. You're here first.
Yeah, I know. A+. Yes. You can win that an Amex card. But anyway, that for us was... This idea of incrementalism was really important to the plan.
Yeah, I mean, and it looked like, I'm familiar somewhat with I've worked at Nielsen, and so I know that service and a little bit of work with Kantar, but it really feels like you've got a much more consultative approach in terms of getting people to use the data. And I don't want to lead you to that conclusion, but that was my sense, and so I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of you in this room who are doing this, so I don't think it's a big aha, but I think it is still pretty different. I think Nielsen and Kantar think of themselves as data companies selling raw data, and they sell to research people who buy data. And we really said we thought that would be very competitive. We thought it'd be very hard. How am I going to displace a 20-year relationship with Kantar and Nielsen? These are great people, great companies. So we just said we're going to create a product that's sold to a specific job function in the company. In our case, it's either the head of marketing at a media company or the head of sales. And we said that the product had to sound and feel right to that audience. But I think we've largely steered away from those two companies, which I think very highly of, actually, because we've packaged the data so specifically to this different audience.
Uh-huh. Wonderful. Let me see here. Josh, how have you got in the middle of this market, right? So now you're at a point where I think you've got some significant gravity around there. At what point did you realize, okay, this is real? We're in the middle of a buying, selling process here. We're really making these things work.
Yeah, so I think, if I think back on the early days, when we first started working with data and trying to sell it to people, the most common response that we got was, look, data's kind of interesting, but I'm in the world of global trade. I've been in the world of global trade for decades. I have relationships that give me everything I need. I don't need your data. And this was a common response for a long time. And I think when that stopped being the most common response, I think it started to feel more real. And as I think back about why, I think there were a couple of factors. One is the economic downturn. So, it was interesting, Laurent, to hear you say that you I think you said you had a prototype in 2009. That was when we had our prototype. And that was terrible. We had this amazing search engine for finding new suppliers at a time when virtually nobody was looking for new suppliers.
We still gave you an MOE, so
right.
We've got to check our due diligence here.
It gave me something to do because no customers wanted to talk to me. But I do think the downturn actually changed the dynamics a bit because all of a sudden people had smaller and smaller teams. And they were willing to hear about new and interesting things. They weren't willing to pay in the early days, but they were willing to hear. So that was one. Two, just persistence.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like that's core to it, too.
Beating my head against the wall over and over and over again. But third, and this is one where I just didn't want to believe this, and my investors told me, over and over and over again that this was true, but I just couldn't internalize it. Competition was actually really good for us, because it helped educate the market. And when it started being, why are you better than them? That was a much easier conversation than, why should I buy data in the first place?
So were there established players? I mean, Todd's space is very established. Were there a little more established players?
Yeah, and I'm sitting here telling you all my rookie mistakes, but
That's what we want to hear here. So
yeah,
we're going to get to yours too. We want rookie mistakes.
There's so many of them, but there were established players who were had been in the business for years. Actually, one of them, just announced, was sold yesterday, a company that basically invented our space. It's been bought and sold so many times. And in the early days, we kept telling ourselves and telling our customers that we were fundamentally different than those people. We didn't want to be compared with those people. And that was a mistake, because our customers were inviting us to have a conversation about something that they already knew and understood. And we were making it harder on ourselves, because we were saying, no, you need to forget about them and think of us as something totally different. What we should have said is, yeah, we know those guys, and yes, we can add the value in the same way that they're adding value, but you've never seen this data like we're going to give it to you. So yes, there were some established players. There have been some startups that came along around the time that we did. All of those people I've hated at one point or another, but in retrospect, they've really been our best friend, because they've helped educate the market, given our customers a reference point. And now that I'm a little older and a little wiser, I recognize that, but I didn't for a very long time.
Laurent, tell us kind of some of your growth stories.
Well, I want to agree with what he just said. I mean, that was a pivotal point for us as well, too. I mean, we went from, going into a meeting in 2008 at S&P Cap IQ and proposing to do what we were doing in the partnership with them. And it was like, what's a graph engine? What are you doing? What's relationship mapping? 2014, July 21st, we announced a partnership with that exact company to do exactly what we were supposed to do with them, back then. And the only reason why it happened in 2014 is because when we were doing it in 8 and 9, nobody had any idea what this was. It was before, so LinkedIn, which is everybody's competitor, and everybody's competitor in this room and in this conference, and if you don't know it, wake up, educated the market. And then a whole bunch of other companies also came into the market, and now I go into conferences and oh, you're like that guy. So, oh yeah, I'm exactly like that, except I'm a lot better. So if you're going to buy from him, you should instead talk to us. And it's really great, because now you're not alone, and now I know I'm in a real business. Before, it was really evangelical. I think it's a great idea. I think it makes sense. Go back, talk to my wife, talk to my investors. This is something that makes sense. But now that I have 15 people doing it, it's like, okay, as long as I'm finishing the top 3, I'll be fine. So
given when the buyers start to have some sort of reference point of, okay, you're not like
there's a market,
kind of like this.
There's a market.
So
and also it gives you
into that in some way or another.
It gives you a map. It gives you a map to differentiate yourself. When you are out there alone, you really don't know what to do. You say, oh, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. So you do something and still silence. You don't know. You get no response. But when there are people doing one thing and you say, well, this doesn't make any sense, I'm going to go do this, then there's a clear comparison, and you can go to a client and the client says, well, I'm going to buy this. And you say, oh, market validation. And if the customer says, no, I'm going to buy that, so, oh, I made a mistake. Now I should try to do this, maybe a little bit better. Or it gives you a point. So I think that was one of the, I don't think I'm a rookie. I've done this before, but even though I've done this before, I keep making the same mistakes. So obviously, I don't know what I'm doing.
Different markets.
But the point is that it's great to have competition. It's great to have competition. So that was one of the first things. The second thing is that you need to basically preserve your resources for the marathon. When you start a new business in a new industry, trying to do something new, it's always going to take longer and longer and longer than you ever expected, and even longer than that. So the key thing is to essentially try to be very focused, remain focused on, engage with customers that are talking to you, that are educating you. We launched the product 3 times. This is version 3.0 of the product. You give us a model of excellence on version 2, so we'd have number 3, so we're eligible again.
Okay, all right.
So version 3 is great. It's the best ever, and but it took having customers and beta customers to talk to, who would basically tell you, this is what we want, and you're going, didn't really think about it. So having customers, having beta customers, having pilots, even having unhappy customers is actually helpful because it helps you figure out what you need to do. I think the worst, the worst kind of customer is a customer from whom you never hear. Because that's a guy who's going to surprise you and cancel.
Right. With a no.
With a no.
Yeah.
So the person who calls you and says, fix this, fix this, fix that, is the person who's engaged, who's using your product, and you learn from them, and you get validation, and motivates you to do more. So these are some of the things we learned, and anybody who's been through this successfully knows that there's really no other way.
No, but it's the hard part is keeping that in mind, is realizing, okay, I'm learning even though this hurts right now.
Oh, yeah.
So, you two were nodding your heads. I'd love to hear about your bad customers. I think that's what you were, just the same sort of experience there. On how you
I was up in my hotel room
Right.
working through one of these this morning.
Okay.
It sounds, I realize it must sound awkward to say it, but there's no question that I find that someone who is really hostile and coming back at me and saying, look, we have all of our customers trial our product extensively before they buy. We have a 98% renewal rate across about 1,200 companies, about 1,800 media properties. And in the beginning, it was like a fire drill when one of these happened, when someone would call, and I would feel like I was having an ulcer. But now I have some pattern recognition after sadly. But no, basically, if someone is communicating with that level of passion, and you're responsive as a company, right? You're not going to say, "Hey, I'm not going to not listen to you." Then it's fine. I find it's not that you can have it constantly and repeat itself. But I'm very open with clients. I'll say, "Listen, we have all these clients, and not one has said what you're saying right now." And that doesn't disqualify your comment at all, by the way. It's just why it doesn't work the way you want it to work right this moment. But we absolutely listen and take notes. And most of our add-on, we started with one product, and we have 6 add-ons upsells that we can sell. In this room, I'll call them upsells.
Right, we don't say that.
But that was very important. All those ideas came from client feedback. So some clients come back with things, and we said, that feedback is right for all of our clients, and we're going to build it in, and there's no extra cost for clients. But if someone came back to us and said they have this idea and it's mandatory, we'll say, listen, we can't build that at a profit, so we're going to charge you. And then if we sold it to them, we'll try selling it to another and another and another, and eventually these things will often have developed into totally separate product lines. As an example for us, when we first started, we only analyzed advertising. And when we were scanning in web pages and physical pages of just, you put in a magazine and you're scanning it, my business partner asked, he said, what do we do with all the editorial pages? And I said, I don't know.
The left-hand page.
It was just the other side. And he's like, we're filling up twice as much storage right now. And he's like, we don't sell any of that data. And I just said, why don't we just sort of keep it all? I said, we shouldn't delete anything because we don't really know what. And sure enough, like 4 years later, the publisher of Elle came back and said, we want you to track how often we write about certain brands, certain categories of brands, like how often do we write about sunglasses, and how often do we write about Oakley. This turned out to be a huge, totally standalone business for us that came out of a complaint. And we finally figured out what to do with the other half of our story.
And you have 4 years worth of history,
we had back
theoretically.
No, we went back. That's exactly right. We went back, and it took us a long time because it was millions of scans. But we had all of that, and we made it very profitable. But we didn't know any of that until someone called and yelled at me, literally, to share their passion.
It's nice to hear that digital hoarding pays off. I keep trying to justify it, but to me, when I think about the entrepreneurial experience, I feel like what makes it so hard is that you have to be really stubborn, because a lot of people are going to tell you that what you've got is a dumb idea, and you've got to be really good at taking feedback. Which basically means you have to be really good at not listening and listening.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah.
And I think back on it, and I think the times where I've gone wrong have been the times when I've either, not listened when I should have been listening, or listened when I shouldn't have been listening. But to me, the early conversations with customers, I feel like where I got it wrong was I tuned out the first half of the conversation where they said, no, I'm not going to buy. Because if I took that in, right, I would have given up. So I tuned that out, and in so doing, I too often tuned out the second half of the conversation, which is, no, I'm not going to buy, and here's why.
Here's why, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I wish, if I could go back and tell myself one thing, it would be, don't listen when they say no, but listen to the part that comes after.
Yeah.
And it to me, that was where all the value was, when they were explaining why they weren't going to buy.
Right.
Yeah, that was...
Your first choice is yes, your second choice kind of is no, so you can say why. But if you don't, the way to get rid of a salesperson is tell them nothing, ever. It'll just die off, right? So, we'll tip for some of you. But no, it's okay, why?
Yeah,
absolutely. So, Laurent, you've started a number of companies, gone through some of these phases. How do you keep that visionary thing going with that same kind of balance that Josh is talking about?
I think what you said is absolutely right.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's perfect. I don't know how I can improve on it. I can hear my friends and my wife talk here. No, clearly you need to have a vision, right? But you can't get lost in the vision. The vision is essentially what gets you up in the morning to go try to do something new. Otherwise, you'd go to the big companies with their glacial pace. So that's the spark. At some point, you need to kind of put the thing out there and then be really hungry for feedback. So I love doing sales. I'm constantly selling, okay? And I don't want anybody else to sell yet. Because, when we start with version 3.0, we start scaling, I want to know that we got it right. So, and I need to be involved, and I need to hear, I need to understand, whenever I'm not involved in sales, I get reports, very detailed reports as to what exactly they said. And I try to listen in, even if I'm doing something else, listen in on, people in the office talk to customers. So I see, what are they really saying? So it's this kind of this vision spark that gets you out there, motivates you to do something for a while, and after that you just kind of let it go and start listening and pay attention to what the market is saying, and then just very, very quickly react. Because one of the things people really appreciate is they really want to know you're listening to them. It's very, very important that you give them the feeling that's how you basically get people's loyalty. Because at the end of the day, I really do think that notwithstanding all electronic commerce, all that stuff, people still buy from people. There's a David Skok, who's a Boston-based VC at Matrix, publishes a blog on SaaS statistics. And I was reading it a couple weeks ago, and in his latest report for last year, he has a statistic about the churn rate of SaaS sales that were done by inside sales, field sales, and e-commerce, meaning by do-it-yourself. Well, the churn rate on the e-commerce sales is 5 or 6 times higher than the inside sales and the field sales. So even in this world of e-commerce, where everything can be automated, people still buy from people. So if that's the case, the human element is very important. Mm-hmm. And telling people that you have listened to what they told you creates that loyalty to you that is very important in business. And so, going back to your question, what I try to do is I try to basically remember the vision, remember the general goal, and then listen and communicate back to people that I listened. Even if I originally disagreed, I still need to go back and tell them, well, okay, I did it, you should know I did it, let's continue the conversation. And that opens up the door. People are very receptive, they're lenient, they give you a break, they go on with you, they take a risk, and you build a business that way. Mm-hmm. It's those initial relationships that get you going because somebody took a risk because they said, this guy knows what he's doing, he's paying attention, and I think I'm going to get out of him what I need eventually, even if I'm not getting out of it right now. And that's the first, second, the first 10 customers are like that. After that, you figured it out, you scale.
So you're about to scale now?
We're now 3.0 is we have a channel partnership with S&P. We've trained 30 salespeople. Their salespeople.
Okay, so you're going to go through this.
We're doing both. We're doing in the financial services market with a partnership with them. We've trained their salespeople. We have webinars, email campaigns that are going to be starting. So that's one way of doing it. But we couldn't have done it until we had delivered ourselves the few sales on the direct, because they were not going to start doing that. We're not going to start channel sales until you guys proven that this thing, the people buying this thing.
Yeah,
so we had to go and get a few elephants ourselves, and having done that, they were ready to start. But that's what we're doing. So we're scaling now. We're in the process of doing another fundraising right now. Can't talk too much about it. It would be a violation of securities laws. But we are in fundraising mode.
Turn the mic off.
Yeah, we are in fundraising mode. And once we raise that, we're gonna increase we're gonna accelerate our own direct selling. So right now we're still relying on partners. We have changed our business model considerably since we got the model of excellence 2 years ago, in the sense that we go to market now with our data partners, which is something very, very interesting, because we don't compete. We used to compete with our data providers. We used to take their data and we transform it into something else and go out and compete right with them. And now we focus on the analytics, and we actually showcase our data partners. So when you buy the Reachable 3.0 version, you will see CapIQ data in the product. It will not be hidden. It will be right there. Analytics are powered by our analytics, our algorithms, their data, other data. But when you buy the CapIQ version of the product, it's got their data. And if we did a deal tomorrow with another company in another vertical, it would have their data right there. And it would be
Is it your system that they see, or is it their system? System?
So that's another change of the strategy we made. It's reachable everywhere. We have our own platform. We have our browser plugins, and we have our APIs. So if you want it within your platform, it's there. If you want it an overlay, a plugin overlay on top of your platform on the web, if you want deep integration via an API, it's there. So, and that's also a complete change in strategy. Before, you have to come here, we have the destination, etc. So now we leverage the data partners, we partner with them, we can go to market with them, and we can essentially enhance their platforms with our analytics overlay, or if people come to our platform, depending on which version of the product they bought, they're going to see your data.
Okay. And Todd, Josh, how do you integrate? Just some integration stories, platform stories, client, user, workflow, that kind of thing. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, the phase 1 of Panjiva was no integration whatsoever.
Again, award-winning phase 1 here. Okay.
Yeah, and it was a really well thought out strategy. We thought we were building a marketplace, right? It's actually phase 2. It was phase 2 was the smarter version of Alibaba.
Okay.
And so, we were trying to bring together buyers and suppliers globally, and in that line of thinking, or with that strategy in mind, you need everybody coming to the same place, right? You need buyers there at the same time that suppliers are there. Mm-hmm. So the last thing that we wanted to do was push our data anywhere else.
Okay.
Whether that was our customers' systems, right? We didn't want, big Fortune 500 company to pull down a bunch of data and just consume that data inside. We wanted them on Panjiva creating an RFP after they've consumed the data. So we didn't want to push data to them. And we certainly didn't want to push data to partners, people who were in the B2B space, touching our buyers and suppliers, because then they weren't ever going to visit Panjiva. But eventually, and it was failure that got us there. But eventually, we realized, this marketplace thing ain't working. We're a data company, and we need to meet people where they are, not where we would like to meet them. And essentially, we flipped things around completely and said, we've got a platform that we think is really easy to use. For specific use cases, you want the data in this particular way. Panjiva is going to be awesome at delivering it that way. But you want data inside your system? Great. Use the API. You want to partner with Panjiva, bundle it with other data? Great. Here's our API. Do it. And that's been really good for us. It just took too long.
Got any experience in all that? Are you
we
separate deliver these reports to strategies?
I think we were very open to looking at outside platforms, both to deliver our data in the first few years, and also from a perspective of reselling. We said, listen, we do need to scale the company. We don't have enough resources. At the time, we had 2 or 3 sales reps, and we said, this is going to take forever for us to get through the prospective client list. And so we found some outside companies, and I was aware of all the likely pitfalls in partnering and reselling, and we fell into all of them. That's like the worst thing, by the way. In early deal making I used to do, I would fall into these holes, and I was like, I had no idea there was a hole here. Where going into it, I knew it would be very hard, and you have to support reseller relationships with immense amount of training and follow-up and marketing. And there is really a playbook that works. We really failed at that. And after a couple years of real consistent failure, we said, all right, the actual answer is to hire 25 salespeople. And we did that.
Wow,
and,
so is that your team now?
Yeah, we have a little over 25 people who are in sales. So but that was this was 3 years ago now. And it was a big decision, and we went out and raised capital to support that.
Yeah, it's a huge decision. I mean,
and it meant hiring, we had like 3 people in account management, and that grew to 15 also, and marketing grew from a person to 6 people. So there was a lot of effort, and that had its own series of issues, but we had a lot of control over it. And even today, I think over the years, we've had a lot of people who've lasted and me in this. We've just had a lot of learning. There's been time to learn and iterate, and instead of making big changes all the time, we've been able to incrementally make improvements on the sales process, not just the product. And that's been good. And we also made a decision to own the client. That was something we debated a lot internally. Even when we did the reseller agreement, we worried that we wouldn't own the client relationship, and we worried that if we didn't, we wouldn't have these opportunities to upsell. We worried that we wouldn't hear the voice. I'm like you. I sell most of my time. The management team actually does not sit around me. I sit with the sales team, and I sit at an open, not even cubes, we just have open desks. And I sit in the middle of that. I'm not even at a nice desk. I'm just in the middle. And I sit in the middle for the same reasons, exact same reasons. I want to hear what everyone's saying. I want them to hear me. If there's success, we all hear it. If there's failure, we hear it together. But that for us, and that owning the client relationship has kept us very wary of reselling. I think it has also cut us off from some opportunities. So as we've grown, we've had a lot of companies ask us to buy the data now and to partner with us. And in this desire to be really focused, we've said no. But we definitely don't know if that's the right decision.
I think I got advice in the early days on partnerships, which you guys are reminding me of. Somebody said to me that you shouldn't think of partnerships as a way to create demand. You should think of partnerships as a way to fulfill demand. And I think, though we did what we did for all the wrong reasons, I'm really grateful for all the time that we spent owning the relationship, because it made the product better, it made everything better, and also put us in a better position, Laurent, like you were saying, when you go to the partners, because you can say to them, yeah, of course this is saleable, we know because we sell it all day long.
And you carve out a market that's maybe a little difficult, or they've got better entree into. Is that how you're looking at?
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things that we learned from our partners. So in the beginning, we were going to a market that we didn't really know. we thought we knew, but we didn't really know. So when we trained the salespeople, we heard all the objections they made on behalf of the customers. So when you have, the beauty of a strategic partnership with a big company is that they have customers and you don't. So they have the feet on the ground and you don't. So you can leverage a relationship with a strategic partner for two ways. One, get them to do sales for you, which doesn't happen 75% of the time. Okay, you have to own the relationships, absolutely. And we structured ours in a way that we own the relationship. But the other thing is you actually get market knowledge. You'd go in and you say, dear sales team, you guys have been selling billions of dollars of data, content, blah, 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 to these customers. We're going to sell this stuff now. They look at you and say, wait a minute, I talk to my customers every day. They're never going to buy this stuff. That's huge knowledge. The guys just saved me like 2 years of pain. It's like, well, they're not going to buy this stuff? What do you mean? Why not? Well, I don't understand. Okay, let me fix it. Come back. Okay, now go sell it. Now I still won't sell it. Why don't you want to sell it? Because of this, and that. Okay, let me come back. Now will you sell it? Wow, this is great stuff. I'm going to make a lot of money with this. Okay, so it's not a customer, it's not a check, but this interactive session with a sales team that knows the market is extremely valuable. They're basically telling you, listen, I know this market, I'm not going to get out of bed in the morning and sell your thing, because it ain't going to work. I mean,
there's a little bit of, well, you were talking about too, I've worked in some channel situations where, you got to listen to half and not listen to half, because sometimes they're too busy or they don't want another thing, or clearly it's a great way to get potentially client objections before.
Yeah.
Well, in your business also, you can sell, so I don't know how much this, a lot of times when I'm sitting with our investors, they'll talk about horizontal SaaS companies versus vertical SaaS companies. So a vertical SaaS company is MediaRadar. We sell to only one vertical. We sell to media companies. A horizontal company can sell across verticals. And for sure, reselling agreements and partner agreements are hugely opportunistic and great in horizontal plays, because you're never going to get to everybody in the entire market. Exactly. So it actually works really well.